Today we have the A-Wing XPS, Lightwind by Armstrong for you in our test. We tested sizes 7 and 8 square meters. The front loop is somewhat too small for large hands, but it is firm enough to control the wing well. For steering, we have flat, rectangular carbon handles that are wrapped with webbing. This strap is initially a little slippery, but it improves after using it 5, 6 or 7 times. Otherwise, they are well sized and positioned overall a little bit, perhaps too far back. So a slightly more forward placement would make handling during takeoff easier. The windows are large and mounted parallel to the center strut, allowing for really good visibility. For the front tube and the cross strut material, we have a high-strength Dacron material with rectangular support from additional polyester threads, and this front tube is closed with a simple piping seam. Additionally, the middle part, that is, the cross where the center strut is also attached, is reinforced on the inside with a doubling that has been additionally sewn. The flight fabric used here is a triple ripstop material. The deepest point of the profile is positioned slightly further back compared to other tested models, and the entire structure is supported by a small infill panel. The center strut has a slight S shape, but this does not result in the handles being ergonomically aligned. Impact and abrasion areas are protected by a heavy fabric material, which extends all the way to the tips. The trailing edge is doubled, and additionally reinforced with 2 battens on each side. The trailing edge is additionally widened with an extra wide, stable batten, and it serves to further increase the tension of the trailing edge. The transition from the front tube to the flight fabric is doubled with an additional fabric strip, and overall, this wing is really very well crafted. What immediately stands out upon first use or is felt right away is that this wing here is the lightest one we have tested so far. In the size of 8 square meters, and that already in really very, very light wind, clearly under 10 knots. Here, the trailing edge floats very quickly and freely. This is comparable to the Cabrina Vision. During the launch process, one should pull the wing far above the head to easily reach the rear handle. In displacement mode, the Lightwind XPS wing from Armstrong feels well balanced. Early takeoff is very possible with the wing because we have a very high base pull from the wing and a truly efficient profile that works well in light wind. With a slight oscillation, the wing operates noticeably and visibly, but this gentle movement generates so much power that one can effortlessly start even well below 10 knots in a completely relaxed manner. If there is more wind, or if it is generally a bit gusty, starting is not a problem at all. We tested the wing or the 2 wings with board sizes of 75 liters, 96 liters, 100 liters, and 106 liters. The whole combined with wings between approximately 90 to 150 square centimeters. And it is around 7 to 8 and then up to 14, a maximum of 15 knots, where we have a really very stable and self-supporting wing. In all maneuvers, the wing must be guided lightly here, meaning it does not really swing independently to the other side. And even when maneuvering against the wind, you have to exert a bit of strength because we already have a somewhat noticeable resistance overall and a leading edge that ticks slightly towards the air. This becomes particularly clear when riding in gusty or somewhat stronger winds. In comparison, a F1 CWC or a Duotton Ventus offers somewhat lighter handling. Basically, the whole thing is manageable, and after a short acclimatization period, everything is easy to handle. And at this point, we come to what we believe is a really very important point. This wing really has enormous power and strength. That must indeed be controlled overall. And this is of course best achieved through the application range of body weight. We have found that if you weigh up to 90-95 kilograms, 7 square meters is completely sufficient even in the absolute lowest wind range to ride just as early as with other 8 square meter wings, but it has a good response. And when you actually use 8 square meters for this weight, you realize that it is always just a bit too much, always a little over. We would really only recommend that to riders weighing 90 to 95 kilograms and above. One point that definitely counts for the XPS Lightwind wing from Armstrong is the geometry. The whole design is so tight in terms of ratio that the tip does not sink at all and does not get stuck. And here one generally does not need to pay much attention to it. By gently steering downwards with the backhand, the wing really balances itself very nicely. The Armstrong XPS Lightwind is truly a real power machine. You have a wing that offers tremendous power when pumping, even with considerable movement, allowing you to get on the water incredibly early. In the optimal wind range, we have a wing that is perfectly balanced, beautifully aerodynamically shaped, and shines in that it does not pinch at the tips at all. Only when it reaches the point of having too much wind, or when we have very gusty wind conditions, does this wing reach its limits. It is important to note the difference between 7 square meters and 8 square meters. One should really consider this. 8 square meters is really too much for individuals weighing up to 90 kilograms. 7 square meters is completely sufficient here, as it is truly one of the strongest, if not the strongest kite for light wind currently on the market that we have tested. In strong winds, we have this tendency to tip to the windward side. The leading edge pulls to the windward side. You really have to work against it significantly with both the front and backhand. And this is why there is this recommendation to choose between 7 and 8 square meters based on weight, so that one can operate as much as possible in the optimal wind range. Because the high end of the 7 square meter wing and the subsequent handling are clearly better. And finally, looking at the price, the 8 square meter wing is offered at a selling price of $1,298, which is really favorable compared to the power that this wing delivers.